I felt we had a gun to our head because we had a timeline to meet. We had to present something to the Detroit Historic Commission that would be acceptable. At the same time, we had to present something to the parish that was economically feasible. Back last summer, August of 17, my mother, Lorraine Wilk, brought to my attention that the church was considering tearing down the spires. She was extremely disheartened and said that many parishioners felt the same way, most of all Father Greg.
How can we function? How can we live without the steeples? Sweetest Heart of Mary without the steeples, it's not the same church, it's not the same place. So my reaction was, well, I have to be with my people. Why do we have steeples and towers in the churches? They indicate our desire to be close to God. And now everything will be flat. It's no more this kind of vertical dimension that leading us to God. So it would be sad. And I was sad. I would define this way my feelings. I was sad.
Both my grandparents on both sides, my mom and father's side, were parishioners of Sweetest Heart of Mary Church. My parents were married in this church. I was baptized at Sweetest Heart, and my daughter Jennifer and her husband were married at Sweetest Heart of Mary Church. The church was built in 1890. Took about 2 years for completion. The lumber that was used for primarily the construction of the spires, the long rafters and other roofing material that were used were the byproduct of trees that were cut down in the surrounding land. A lot of this was farmland. Trees would be cut down. The trees would then be pulled by mule to a sawmill. Once they're cut to the desired lengths and widths, they were brought back to the church. And unlike what we're using today, hydraulic lifts and cranes to do the repairs to the roof, workers back then erected scaffolding that they cascaded piece on top of piece on top of piece and brought these heavy lumber rafters and timbers and other bracing up by hand using pulleys and ropes, which is unbelievable. A couple of years ago, the church did not have the money to complete the necessary restoration, and despite fundraising efforts, it was clear that the only option was a tear down. I had asked my mom if she thought it would be wise for me to talk to Father Greg. I have no knowledge of how to repair steeples or what the costs are. However, I do have a construction background with my previous career, and I had asked to meet with Father Greg, which we did meet in September of 2017.
So he came to me and he talked about, his mama. And then he said, Father, I love so much two things, my mother and this church. Well, I love my mom too. And so let's see if we can do something together.
I asked Father if he would be willing to allow me to explore other options rather than a tear down or demolition of the spires. Father was extremely agreeable. He said, God bless you. He says, if there's anything we can do to save the spires, that's his goal.
So at a certain point with my fellow parishioners, we said, well, let's do something. let's keep the steeples. Let's save our steeples. Even though, we invented this expression, save our steeples, but I like the original one, save our souls. Because the steeples, basically, what is the steeples in this church? What is the church about? It's about the souls, our souls, and we want to save them.
The biggest challenges that I faced in this project early on was pricing. Because the church did not have the financial resources to do a restoration, as was originally quoted by the contractors that they had gotten prices from, it appeared the only options were demolition. So in order to bring the pricing down to a budget that the church could afford and still do a proper restoration in accordance with the design specifications and drawings that the engineers had drawn, was quite a challenge. And by talking to contractors, explaining our situation, negotiating agreements, again, not just for labor, but for the rental equipment that we need. The cost of this equipment is very, very expensive. As an example, the cost of the crane that we'll be having at the church here in the next few weeks is $4,250 a day. So it's easy to over-exceed your budget, and through the ability to negotiate and get suppliers and vendors to lower their pricing to help us with this project, it couldn't be done.
We had a storm at the later part of the winter. I was called out to do some other work on the main church. While I was out, Larry Wilk was looking for another contractor to take care of the steeple work. He was wanting to save these spires where other people were wanting to tear them down. He asked me at that time if I was interested in taking a look at the steeples and seeing if there's anything I could help them out with. And that's how I got involved with the project, through Larry Wilk.
When my contractor has a problem, I have a problem. So I try to work through his problems for him, because if he's successful, then the parish is successful. So it doesn't, my responsibilities don't stop and end at any certain point. Whatever we can do to make this a successful project, and again, do it within budget or under budget, is our goal. We also looked at other options to try to save the cost of restoration. One is to use a polymer slate-like material in lieu of actual slate. That was a significant cost reduction. However, to do that, we had to go in front of the Detroit Historic Commission to get approval to use a simulated or polymer slate-type material in lieu of natural stone. We did that in November of 17. We got approval from the Detroit Historic Commission, which allowed us then to complete the pricing. And I'm happy to tell you, with all being said, that we were able to not only reduce the cost of the restoration proposal, we were able to bring it in at a price less than the demolition, which was something that I was elated about. We negotiated pricing with the various contractors, suppliers, rental companies, the cost of the lifts, the cost of the cranes, the cost of the building material. All are significant and all play a part in the overall cost of the project. And again, by going to each company, vendor individually, and explaining our situation and trying to negotiate pricing, we were successful in getting the project at a very, very cost-effective price. Came back to Father. Father was extremely excited about it, and we started repairs on the church in early 2018.
We've started our tear off. We have about 5 of the sides, the old slate removed. We are installing new marine plywood on there now. Then it gets an underlayment, and then synthetic slate go back on that.
We have completed all the interior structural repairs to both the north and the south spire. That is probably the single most important aspect of this project. Why does this project mean so much to me? That probably is the easiest question to answer. As I explained, my father's deceased. My mom is still alive. She's 90 years old, and she's extremely devoted to this parish. And I don't think there's anything that I could ever give her or buy for her that would mean as much to her as saving these spires.
In the city of Detroit, because we are here in the city of Detroit, we don't have so many historical buildings, and the churches indicate, the history and tell us how beautiful this city was, how great it was, because it's a great place to live. And now, besides, when I mentioned before, it's all about our soul, salvation, that we need to be close to God. But what about the community where we live, which is the city? And take away this, and what would remain? The businesses, the stadiums, and that's it? What about the soul of the city? And I believe this is the Catholic Church, but not only Catholic churches, the churches always. Tell us about the spirituality of those who live in this territory. It's not just, this is not just my personal business. This is not even my parishioners who love this church. But I believe all of us who drive by, all of us who happen to live in Detroit, they appreciate and they know how important it is to preserve churches like this and steeples at Sweetest Heart of Mary as well.
The rewarding thing about a project like this is the overall finished project, that it was done correctly, it looks beautiful, and everybody's happy with the work that was done.
I'm very happy that we were not only able to suspend or withhold the demolition that was scheduled for last October, but enter into a contract agreement for the repairs. Had we not gotten involved as we did back last September, I fear that the steeples probably would not be there today. There's so many wonderful parishioners that have given countless hours of their time and volunteer work, money. Their generosity is something that is very, very commendable and something that I have noticed over the years. I get much credit for doing this project, but let me tell you that there are so many other people that what I call unsung heroes that have done work at this parish for decades. And if it wasn't for the volunteers, this parish would not exist. There's no question about that.